So here we are. We're taking our Dungeons and Asians 5th edition D&D characters and transitioning them over to a game called Quest. If you're interested about Quest, you can go to adventure.game to take a look. It's a cool RPG. We're going to be upfront. We don't think, I don't think, and feel free to chime in, I don't think Quest is the perfect game for us yet. And I don't think any game, other than the one like we might design ourselves, I don't think any game is perfect for the stories that we're trying to tell. But what has attracted me to Quest is that it is rules light enough and I would say versatile enough for us to actually make the characters we want with some hacking. But it's mostly just a skeleton. There's no built-in world or anything like that that we have to interact with. It's a rule set for making characters and telling stories, and that's what kind of has drawn me to that. I've kind of listened back to some of our episodes and thought, okay, if we were playing Quest, how would we do it? And in many ways, we kind of already were.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where that's the piece I wanted to say. I don't know, Steve, if you wanted to say anything, because you've been really heavily involved in whatever's been going on right now.
Yeah, I mean, I personally had to work through a lot of emotional stuff, not just with the podcast and the stream, but like my own personal groups and things like that. And I have to say, my groups, I don't think they listen, but if they do listen, they've been absolutely wonderful and just like listening to me just talk about the tensions I'm feeling and some of the uncomfortable notions that I've kind of come across. And I let them know that Dungeons and Dragons, Wizards of the Coast, Hasbro has made me very uncomfortable. And it makes me feel better if they just allow me to speak my opinion and they listen to me. And then we can have a conversation about whether or not they, in turn, are comfortable with Dungeons and Dragons. And together, through a pretty emotional conversation, all of my groups have let me know they are comfortable playing Dungeons and Dragons. They are thankful that they understand kind of the external factors, if I can very vaguely call them that. And we can all reconcile the fact that we are playing Steve's D&D, which is different. Steve puts effort into it. Steve like makes changes to better place stories that we are all comfortable telling. And that was very meaningful. That was very impactful. And I'm very, very appreciative that my groups gave me the time to kind of work through that. So on one hand, I understand, Daniel, on this podcast, I definitely, you and I talked about this. I don't think we should play Dungeons and Dragons for the aforementioned like reasons. But for the individual tables I run, where it's us being friends, getting together, trying to work through a pandemic, Dungeons and Dragons kind of makes sense. And we just have to deal with that. It's very complex.
I mean, I totally agree. Like, the day after we announced that we were switching to Quest, I went to my parents' house and with my girlfriend, and we played D&D with them. It's the only RPG that my family knows how to play, and it brought us together. We weren't using any WotC like content. We were actually playing through a really cool book called Trilemma Adventures. It's actually nominated for an Emmy. It's a collection of 2-page adventures with beautiful maps. I think the creator lives in Toronto too. But we were playing through a really dark adventure, and we found out that my dad is totally the type of player who just fucks shit up. Totally just fucks shit up. They literally set themselves up. They infiltrated this church or this temple to investigate this cult that was basically serving the local villages nearby a gruel made from crushed and boiled spirits. And they lined up with all the villagers to receive their offerings. And they were like, okay, this is just a reconnaissance mission. We're going to check out the temple. And my dad's like, when I go up to the head priest to receive my dish, I pour it on his feet and say, fuck you. And I pull out my axe.
I love that. Holy crap.
That was my
There's
dad.
always one.
and my dad is that guy.
Hilarious.
So like, I'm still playing D&D with them for like Level Up Gaming, or the therapy organization that I help run. We're still playing D&D because that's what our participants know, and that's what helps our participants work on their social skills. But But yeah, for this show, for actual plays, for any of my work, I'm not doing anything 5th edition. Yeah. So we're going to get started with Quest. I'm actually curious, like based on, I know Ammar, you might have, I think you just looked at it for the first time today, right?
I did, yeah.
Yeah. And like I've had a solid look at it. I'm curious, what do you think of it, Ammar? You looked at it for the first time maybe 2 hours ago?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I like it. I appreciate that there is kind of just enough crunch for it to be a game, I guess, for lack of a better term, but it doesn't overwhelm you with too many rules and too many specifics. I'm glad to see that they are making good use of a D20. The way that the resolution mechanic works is pretty cool. A 20 is still a critical hit. A 1 is still a critical fail. But then you've got ranges within that. An 11 to a 19 is a success. I think it's 6 to 10 is a qualified success. So the GM gives you 2 choices that you have to choose between.
Correct, yeah.
And then I think 2 to 5 is a failure, but not sort of a critical failure, if I recall correctly.
Yep.
So I think that that's really kind of cool that they did that grading, because that is an innovation from the narrativist tradition that we see all the time in Apocalypse World, but hasn't made its way into D&D. So it's really cool to have that. Yeah, there's opportunities to succeed, but with qualifications or flaws, which is really cool dynamic at a table that I'm looking forward to seeing more at this, more like supported. We already do that because that's just kind of our style of play, but is more supported by the game mechanics.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I really like how you brought up these design roots in Apocalypse World, because what I love most about Powered by the Apocalypse is the fact that every roll, whether it be a fail or success, has structural consequences built in. And that's what this has. In D&D, when you're rolling that D20, you either succeed or you fail. And you may critically succeed and you may critically fail. But a success is honestly not that interesting. And a fail is not that interesting.
Yep.
The only really interesting stuff you get is like your critical fail and your critical success. But in this, if you succeed, there may still be drawbacks. If you fail, there are built-in consequences. Like I really like that about this system. How I feel about the D20, I have no feelings on that. But I like that we have a dice system for now that is giving us something, and our listeners and other people who might start playing Quest, a really good tool to tell stories. Like, I think between all of us, we have decades of role-playing experience. And it's easy for us to say, well, in D&D, if you hit, you can make it narratively interesting. But for somebody who's new to the game, a kid, an after-school program, a school, a therapy group, this, the scale that they've kind of adopted from the narrativist approach in Apocalypse World is really useful for a title like this.
Do they adapt it from Apocalypse World?
I don't know, but that's the immediate vibe that I get.
Yeah, I mean, that's true.
And I want to underscore something that you brought up there, Daniel, which is that this is a very beginner-friendly system. I cranked through all the player sections in probably 40 minutes in the book, and I love the typesetting and the layout and stuff. It's beautiful. I love that there was that one page where it's a list of ideas, I think, and they're aligned so that they actually the sentences get shorter and shorter and shorter.
Yes.
On the page, it looks like that. It's good layout is just after my own heart. So this is also lovely.
And let's not
very
forget
interesting.
the art.
Yeah, the art is beautiful and very diverse. The characters portrayed are very diverse, doing a variety of different activities, which I personally enjoyed. But I do think it's kind of interesting, Ammar, that you think that it's good for a beginner. I would actually say that this game is much better for someone who is experienced with role-playing games, and so you want something that is less restrictive in terms of rules. You have a good grasp of like story pacing, or like of character archetypes, and or things that you want to do with a character, I think, which usually comes from having played a couple of games before, then I think Quest is a great alternative. So it's great for us. I do think that for a beginner, though, I would recommend them to actually something more structured and then move to Quest.
See, that's an interesting thing, because that's what. So as when I was a teacher, when we were using D&D, I said this on Twitter. I had wished Quest existed when I was a teacher. Because when Pathfinder or 5th edition D&D was too crunchy for new kids in the museum program, we turned to Dungeon World. And we know that Dungeon World, and this is before I knew about Dungeon World's creators' flaws, and there are certainly flaws with Dungeon World as a system. But Dungeon World is interesting because it has a certain amount of crunch to it, but then a certain amount of like confusing narrative freedom for a new gamer.
Right.
So the way I've kind of seen it is like there's the crunch end of like Pathfinder,
Burning Wheel,
3rd edition, Burning Wheel, really many of the 2D10 systems. And then there's like Quest on the simplicities side. And I find that like Dungeon World kind of sits in the middle. And in many ways, like sitting in the middle has challenges of its own.
Yes. I mean, we can talk about the design of Dungeon World and its many iterations and like people's fan hacks of Dungeon World, which are so good and fix so many of their problems all day. But I guess right now we are doing character creation and talking about
that's okay.
Quest.
And honestly, I will say like TC, who is the creator of the game, is actually in our chat right now talking to the community.
That's fair.
And
that's
we have an answer as to why the D20 is because TC likes the feel of rolling a D20, and I totally vibe with that.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like, also like I like the D20. I like holding a D20, rolling it. I like it so much that I have it tattooed on me.
Nice.
But
true.
Let's kind of get into like Dungeons and Asians and what it is, because it's crazy that it's still crazy to me, Steve. There are so many people who tweet at us, like tweet at you, tweet at me, tweet at Ammar, and now in the future we'll tweet at Agatha. Follow at Mighty Shrimp.
Too wise.
That a lot of people came to us because they know our Asians read streams, and not because they listen to the podcast, and not because they really liked Dungeons and Asians. It's because they watched Steve and I read Oriental Adventures for 26 hours, or they're watching us read L5R right now, which is honestly, I'm having a lot of fun reading L5R, because of the very nuanced discussions we're having in that conversation. Like, I really like that. It's very different from our read-through of Oriental Adventures. So there are going to be a lot of people who might be watching this, listening to this, or even tuning in live who have never heard of Dungeons and Asians.
I didn't even think about that.
Right? Because we're like, oh, yeah, I love the stream. Or like, I like your YouTube channel. I'm like, what about the podcast?
What about
What about the podcast? So now we have an opportunity to do our Session 0 Redux and introduce our new members of our audience to what this is. What is this show? Why did we do it? And what are we doing?
Sorry, just before we leave the topic,
Yeah.
I do want to put in a quick plug for continuing to do the Al-Qadim stream as well.
Yeah.
That's happening this Saturday, which is July 18th. So I'm not sure whether you get the podcast in time, but you can watch it on the YouTube after if you miss it. But it's happening this Saturday at noon in Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah, so once a month, the third Saturday of every month, we do something called Critical Read. And I'm not saying we, because I'm just producing this, but Ammar, you have a wonderful cast who are reading through Al-Qadim and giving these like incredible insights into that. And then, so there are going to be people who know us from that. And we only did one, and it was incredible. What is Dungeons and Asians? I know it's different for all of us. Like, the experience is different for all of us. Like, what is Dungeons and Asians?
Who is Dungeons and Asians?
Why is Dungeons and Asians?
Jinx.
Yes.
And yeah, like actually, I'm going to start off with that. Dungeons and Asians, sort of as a headline, is an actual play series But for me, it really is an opportunity to hang out with my friends, right? And to like, oh, I know,
Aw.
Agatha.
Ammar.
I'm a real softie, I know. But yeah, like I always have so much fun, and everybody brings such interesting ideas and energies and perspectives to the table. I think I've said this before too. I love the way Daniel crafts a world and comes up with very interesting scenarios and situations that we have to both think and also sort of act. Like we have to think our way out of, but we also there are great opportunities for us to express our characters and to find our characters in response to these situations and in response to these things. The emotional honesty with which that Steve plays all of his characters, but specifically Ning, it's incredible. And I just love the creativity that Agatha brings. It's just consistently mind-blowing to me, the way that she plays her character. And Dong Feng is just passing
Iconic.
shrimp, I guess. Iconic at this point, certainly. And it's just absolutely fantastic. And I really enjoy the way our characters' relationship is shifting and transforming. And it's just, for me, I love the experience of being a part of this group.
So the root of Dungeons and Asians name change pending is we wanted to tell I think Daniel, it was when you messaged the group and was like, there's no Asian.
No, that was at D&D Live. I called Ammar and I was pacing back and forth outside of the venue being like, Ammar, I have this idea. I have an idea for a Pan-Asian monster hunting squad. We would have guest DMs talking about the supernatural. Oh yeah, and we should also do a D&D show that's Asian. My minutes.
I remember that call. Anyway.
Yeah. So this side project became a main project.
Yeah.
I still want to play that other game, but
I do too. And I think we should we'll figure that one out, but that's not what the stream is.
Monster Hunt.
Yeah.
Monster, sorry. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, after we had done the David and Goliath thing with Watsy, after that's done, we can.
After we've kind of made our characters and we've settled into this and we've figured out what our lives are in quarantine. Honestly, like, I'm happy
on stream.
Yeah, I'm happy that we've gone virtual and that I get to continue to connect with you. I know that, like, I feel like we've talked more now that we're in quarantine than before. Like, Ammar and I, we just, like, text about our bags. Ammar and I literally had a text chain, and we were just talking about flashlights and solar power.
We're such nerds.
We're such nerds.
That's so in character for the two of you to have a conversation about flashlights.
Right? Steve and I, we chat, like, almost every day. We talk about it, be it the Discord or we stream on Fridays. And then
we're just checking in to be like, hey, I saw someone tagged you and it's kind of gross.
Yeah, a lot of it's been that. And we've been supporting each other. And, you know, it's been really nice. Sorry, Ammar, you got me. You gave me the feels.
Hey, community is really, really important in this time. It may be physical distancing, but it's not social distancing. We're getting closer.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Emotionally.
So for the rest of us, what else? What is Dungeons and Asians to you?
Yeah, Steve.
Oh man. So my answer is it's changed over like our sessions. So I when you brought me on, I was like, oh yeah, let's just play Dungeons and Dragons. I love Dungeons and Dragons. Let's just play. I have a ton of experience, and let's just, you know, I also get to tell some Asian stories on the side of it. That's like a cool bonus. But like primarily I get to play Dungeons and Dragons. That's dope. But I think after even just like session 0 and just playing with Agatha, Ammar, and yourself, Daniel, I kind of realized that I kind of play Dungeons and Dragons because it's kind of like what is in or like generally from a market perspective accessible to me. Like if you think of like, I want to play an RPG, Dungeons and Dragons. It's like the Kleenex of tabletop RPGs.
Yeah.
But then after I started playing, I was like, wow, I'm experiencing things at this table I otherwise would never experience at my other D&D tables. That's very interesting. I'm gonna have to digest that. And then Wizards of the Coast kind of says their thing. And I'm like, oh, interesting. I feel like a little more uncomfortable about this. And then we play more and we talk about it. And I realize that, my perception of RPGs is really colored by just the fact that D&D is the only real RPG I've ever played. And thinking back on Dungeons & Asians, my most impactful, meaningful moments are completely outside of the system.
Well, I mean,
Like-
one of our most
Yeah.
one of our most popular episodes, Ammar and I held hands and watched you and Kiana just talk for 2 hours, and we didn't roll any dice.
So that would be
Extension.
that is the very first D&D session I've ever played where no dice were rolled. And that is like a very impactful thing for me. And I think that was the turning point. That was like the moment where I'm like, wow, why am I playing RPGs at all? And that's a very deep question. And it's taken me a very long time to get to an answer. And spoiler, I haven't really gotten to an answer. But now that you've kind of like shook up my world a little bit, and I'm looking at Quest and I might be looking at other games on the side.
Yeah, why not?
Steve, we need to play more games together.
Yes, we absolutely do. And just like that whole anxiety I feel about playing with people, and like I'm not an expert at the system, because obviously like from a Dungeons and Dragons perspective, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm the master of these rules. I have like this weird psychological safety net.
But what does
to
that
just
mean?
Like play. What does that even mean?
You had
exactly.
You had a really good tweet. I don't even know if you remember tweeting this, but it was so subtle. And you said there was this moment when we saw these birds, and my first instinct was to attack them. In the last episode, our latest episode of Dungeons and Asians, our heroes, who you could see on screen, or if you're listening, you're very aware of our bandit, our anthropomorphic shrimp, and our water genasi. But I think we should talk about Ning.
Yeah.
We should talk about that now or in the future. They ventured into the Shadewood to hunt this creature called the Shadow Marquis, and the Shadow Marquis was this gigantic mythical dog whose fur was actually black rose petals, and its body was made of all of the victims of those who have encroached upon its sacred wood. And inside it was the body of one of the four nobles, who are one of our mythical heroes, who protected the land from demons. And in that sort of recording, what I tried to do was actually introduce you to elements of Chinese classical mythology by talking about a very obscure bird called the jianyao, and they basically, their feathers can be used to turn wine into poison. Their droppings is acidic and can melt stone, and they have beautiful, vibrant colors. And you mentioned that when that entire scene happened, you thought, okay, well, this is a combat encounter.
Yep.
And that tweet really like hit me, because I was like, oh, that's the impact that D&D has had on you, and that's your play style.
Absolutely, yeah. And I remember feeling a tiny bit of shame at the end of that, where I was like these obviously it was like unfounded. You guys don't care if like that's how I think about seeing birds, but the shame really came from a D&D Steve would be like, oh yeah, this is going to be a combat encounter. Let's figure out like how to tactically kill these birds. But like real life Steve and most other aspects of Steve would be like, new birds, cool. Let's like learn more about it. So like, yeah, D&D has like really colored, and I'm going to keep using that word because I can't think of a nicer way of putting it.
Conditioned?
Maybe conditioned.
Molded?
Molded.
Influenced?
These are all very, very good words, but they have had D&D has had a profound effect about how I approach problems in role-playing games, and not always in a good way.
So for reference here, how long have you been playing D&D again?
Yeah.
16 years.
Wow. And that's half your
Whoa.
life?
21 years here.
Yeah. So
Wow.
like it's totally understandable that that has influenced you because you grew up with it.
Yeah.
And hey, we still had an amazing like time together. Our combat encounter did not follow the D&D rule. They like barely did.
The fighter screwed up, like botched a roll and just did not do anything. That was
Yeah,
great.
it was. I wanted to make it. My philosophy with tabletop RPGs, particularly those that are fantasy, is like make it anime as fuck. And that's what I wanted.
That's a pro tip for people at home. That's a pro strat.
That's pro strat. It's valid. But yeah,
DMing pro strat.
I think it's a really Dungeons and Asians is a good opportunity, like you said, Steve, to kind of connect as a community and tell our stories. Like Agatha, do you have anything to add, like about Dungeons and Asians?
Or about how amazing we are?
But yeah.
I would like to say, before anyone forgets, that we are great.
We were having a real love in there for a while.
We're double Emmy nominated.
Yeah. When did we find out? August?
Yeah, August or something like that. We might be doing Dungeons and Asians.
Like that.
We might be doing Dungeons and Asians live at Gen Con. Who knows?
Ooh, teaser.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh. Yeah. Yeah. Wait. So, I do think it's kind of interesting, Steve, that you said that you felt ashamed that you, or a little bit, that the first thing that you thought of when you saw the birds was combat.
Yeah.
I also thought the same thing, but I didn't feel ashamed.
I think the root of the shame comes from like younger Steve, probably like in other D&D games would have been absolutely right to think it would be combat because it would have been combat.
Right. Yeah.
And then like that Steve would have been vindicated and like felt great. Like, oh yeah, I called it. Let's kill some birds. But current day Steve is like, wow, that's like a very final kind of story. Like that story kind of ends, right? And you don't have much more to go on that. And in that lens, it's kind of boring. Like there's a lot more stories you could tell about seeing birds that are very, very mystical and like just things outside.
They're not
what
even
you know.
mystical. They were,
yeah, that's the other thing.
That's the thing. They're not mystical. A lot of people. I saw somebody in the chat was saying that they thought you were talking about a phoenix. I was like, no, this is literally just a bird.
This is just a bird with acid poop.
It's a bird with acid poop and poisonous feathers. Literally, I think that's something we have to think about when we're actually playing our games too. In D&D and other fantasy games, and I don't want to just pick on D&D. I want to talk about. I was gonna say I want to pick on everyone. No, when we're talking about games like D&D and Pathfinder, we're conditioned to think that when you encounter something that is considered the other by your group, by your character, you are expected to think that there will be conflict. But one of the things that we forget about when we're playing these narrative games is that we are storytelling. We are creating a world. And I think that very much comes from my style of GMing or DMing, dramatic managing, is that I like a full world. I like a complete world. I like to know what kind of trees there are. I like to know whether we're traveling north, south, east, west. I like to know what kind of backpack I have. What do my buckles look like? Mm-hmm. And so the bird scene was literally all I was trying to do was make the forest feel more real.
Mm-hmm. And full of dangers that are not necessarily malevolent or antagonistic.
Exactly. And in Chinese culture, in Chinese classical literature, when you think about books like the Shanhai Jing, the classics of mountains and seas, the unknown, the monstrous, the strange is often the word that's used. The strange is just what's unknown. They're not necessarily evil. And this is where our entrenched ideas of alignment kind of really cause problems in a game that's Chinese. Because the way in Chinese culture, in classical literature, that you look at creatures and monsters and things that are scary isn't from the perspective of vices and virtues that are tied to religious ideas of what is good or evil. Right? Alignment just really doesn't work in a lot of other cultures and how they view characters, heroes, villains, and the unknown. So that's just another reason why kind of D&D didn't work in our setting.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's an excellent example of when we talk about D&D being a European-based fantasy game. It's very localized to that culture, and then for a lot of people, they just kind of go, well, I assume that's true of all cultures because Eurocentrism. but that's an excellent example of the difference between cultures in that way.
Yeah,
And what kind of games or stories different cultures tell based on the presuppositions that usually are not made explicit.
yeah, that's why I'm super excited for Quest, because a lot of the things that are very important in D&D aren't important or present at all in Quest. Alignment, race. Oh, yeah, Steve, right?
Race.
Right? Are not present here. You could be what you want to be. So had we started playing Quest from our session 0 and Agatha was like, what do you want to be? And Agatha's like, I want to be a shrimp. No questions asked. Right? But I remember when Agatha's like, I want to be a shrimp. All of us were like, cool. Let's figure out how to make it work in D&D. And we're like, is it like a turtle? Is it like, what is it?
Yeah.
And yeah, it was tough.
So how are we going to? Can we talk about Steve's character, the water genasi? And
Do you want to start there?
I don't know, Steve. Do you want to?
We can start there, but I have to tell you, I don't have a resolution for this. So if you're looking for me for like how I want to go forward with it, the answer is I don't know, but I'd love to hear some feedback.
Well, why don't we start by introducing your characters?
Okay.
Let's start on the. Let's go Ammar, Agatha, and then Steve.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Ammar, do you want to introduce your character?
Sure. So I play a character named Walid, who comes from the faraway, distant land of Desh, which is a rough analog to sort of South Asia. But fantasy, it's not just sort of historical; it's also fantasized in a number of ways. But there were raiders and pirates who would come from roughly the land of Shah. Or maybe they might actually be intermediaries now that we've kind of really expanded the world beyond Shah. So they came and they would attack this port city that I was growing up in. And one time when they attacked, I was playing on the docks when I wasn't supposed to be, and I was really scared. And I ran onto a ship trying to get away from the violence and the terror, and I accidentally ended up on one of the pirates' ships. And then from there, I ended up going back and finding myself in the land of Shah, somebody from far away, a bit orphaned, and took up banditry, partly because it's hard to get accepted in Shah life, I guess, but also partly because, I didn't really speak the language, I didn't really read the language or anything like that, and so I just kind of took up whatever I could do. So my character, in a number of ways, the way I play him, though, behind, there's this kind of emotional backstory, but he's basically Star-Lord from Guardians of the Galaxy. He's a bit of a rogue. He's fairly sort of charming. He's a fighter. That's his kind of main thing. And I'm really excited to see the way that those fighting styles evolve. And that's an aspect of this world that we're building and this sort of setting that we're building. I'm really, really excited about.
Yeah, and I mean, originally, even on our overlay on Twitch and YouTube, it says Walid is a martial artist. That might change. Maybe Walid is a bandit. Who knows if these labels will change, right? We're telling the exact same story. We're just kind of changing tiny little things about it. Story will be the same. I am not giving up all of the stuff that I've written and all the stuff that we've worked on.
Labels are tricky that way.
Labels are tricky, right?
They don't, putting a label kind of puts a box on a thing, and the label doesn't necessarily represent what's actually in the thing, and the thing may not actually be something that can be put into a box. We're going to tell a story, and then hopefully there will be handles for people to get a sense of it, but really the story is the thing.
Totally, absolutely. So let's go with Agatha. Who is Dongfeng?
Dongfeng is a shrimp, and you can see in the overlay that they are a shrimp with a lot of, what are those called again?
Like antennae?
Antennae. And a giant weapon called a guandao. And I would like to take this moment to point out to everyone on the stream who hasn't listened to the podcast before that let it be said that Dongfeng is the tallest character in the party.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
It's
that's
canon.
the most important thing. So Dongfeng came from a river that flows right by the capital, and they were kicked out for like political reasons. So they're kind of like trying to make their living on dry land by working as a mercenary. So that's how they were drafted into this party led by Steve's character, Ning. I started off wanting this character to be a lot more charming. I put like my charisma to be really high, but then Ammar stole that that role. Thanks, Ammar.
Oh,
so
I didn't mean to step on your toes.
How dare?
How
This is the
dare
time I've decided to point it out. No, it's fine, and I think that
this is a reality TV show. This is the time where we dish on each other. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah, the talking heads. And I think this is the fun part of role-playing games, though, right? Like you start off with an idea and then it kind of goes somewhere else, and then you learn about what you want this character to be as you go. So that's fun. I haven't figured out their weakness yet, but I'm sure they will have it.
I've got questions for you actually today that I had.
Oh my god.
So one of the things we talked about with Tom Feng is like, you're a shrimp, and now that we're playing Quest, it's like, yeah, you're a shrimp. Simple as that. You're a shrimp.
Yeah.
And it's up to us to figure out in the story why you're a shrimp. We talked about you being potentially from the Sky Court, from the heavens, and being sent
once
down
upon
here
a time
for a reason you don't know, and that's for us to figure out. And I'm really excited. Like I've kind of explored different ideas. Like maybe is Dongfang like a Xian, like a celestial being with like a long or immortal lifespan? Is Dongfang reincarnated? We originally settled on you being a sky soldier as our like a class. I guess our role. Now that we're doing Quest, the term is now role, because of your heavenly divine origin.
Yeah. Was Dongfang just a shrimp that was swimming in the pond that one of the bodhisattvas is like meditates on? Because like that happens with like, because that happens with like the fishes, right? There's that kind of fish that people like to. What is that fish called? You know, the one
like a koi.
Yeah, like the koi fish. Like there's
carp?
a lot of stories. Yeah, of them like jumping over the bridge to become a dragon.
Yeah,
Gyarados.
So,
like Gyarados.
like Gyarados.
Wait, this is mean Dongfang's gonna have like a final form. If we kick Dongfang enough, Dongfang will evolve into like a mantis shrimp.
So is Dongfang's role Magikarp? Yeah,
we're all Pokemon, right?
Yeah,
we are.
Wait, does that make me the Pokemon trainer?
That makes you Ash. Ew.
Oh, I don't want to be Ash. Ash is the worst.
Ash, ew.
I don't want to be
sorry.
Ash.
That came from the soul. I am apologizing.
Don't apologize for that. That's a truth for you.
Okay, so if
I like
Daniel's
that.
Ash.
Are we gonna? I don't want to be Ash.
No, let's have this moment. Okay, who is everyone?
Team Rocket.
But which one?
No, Team Rocket.
Ammar is
No,
just
you
the
can't.
team. Ammar is the entity
can't.
Ammar is the entity that is Team Rocket.
Are you like Giovanni with his like big cat, or are you?
Listen,
Are
to
you
quote
Boba
Walt
Fett?
Whitman, I am large, I contain multitudes. I'm Team Rocket.
Don't like it. I reject your answer.
Well, actually, so I mean, what I was thinking about is, so my character, pretends to be the rogue, but is most often just a fool, right?
yeah.
And
Okay,
so that's
fair.
yeah, and I thought that was the difference between sort of your character and my character, going back a little bit here to defend myself against this accusation of stepping on somebody else's toes. But I thought your character was sort of in character funny. My character is just a fool, so he's funny because he's an idiot.
Oh. I'm Bugcatcher Daniel. That's who I am.
Bugcatcher. Oh,
That's me.
Shorts are really comfy.
Yeah.
You know what's even better than just shorts?
Don't fucking say it.
Cargo shorts.
Oh my.
I hate this. Steve, what are you?
I also hate this. I am a Butterfree from season 1. The Butterfree that Ash has to understand that Butterfree is looking for something more. And once Butterfree finds more of their own kind, they understand that, maybe it's not the right life just to be a Pokemon for a trainer, but to like go off and find their own path.
Wow. It's like the Mariah Carey song Butterfly. Shout out to Mariah Carey.
Yeah, I guess that's one way to look at it.
Someone at her.
You can do it now because you have a Twitter.
Hey,
I know,
Mariah Carey,
right?
did you know that DM Steve? And then Steve
He's
gets
inspired.
the follow. Agatha, who are you? Before we move on to...
Oh, I'm Magikarp.
Oh, sorry,
right?
you're Magikarp. Duh.
That's what we established. I splash.
Okay, so
That's a
we've
skill.
got Dongfeng, who is a mystery to themselves, and of course to the rest of the group, which I think is very interesting. But I think the thing that is very clear about Dongfeng is their friendship with Waleed, their loyalty to their friends, and their love of Mantou.
Yeah. I feel like it's more than love of Mantou. It's like this fear of the Mantou being eaten by someone.
Yes.
No
Who shall
names
remain
mentioned.
nameless.
Oh, Waleed.
Waleed.
Not only that, he keeps feeding it to your horse
Yeah.
to befriend
It's
your horse.
So rude.
And for those of you who are listening or watching live or the VOD, our next episode will be a food episode. So please eat dinner before the episode.
Dungeons and Dining.
Dungeons and
There we
Dining.
go.
But I think
It's
that's
happening.
taken. I think that's taken. That's somebody else's thing.
Oh.
Gyar shrimp. Someone
Yeah,
says
Gyar
Gyar
shrimp. So let's now go to Ning, La Ning. Steve,
Yeah.
who is your character?
Yeah, so Ning is a imperial soldier, part of the Law family, who is very well known in Xia. They are Palisade soldiers. They are loyal to Empress Josia, and they've been loyal to the royal family for many, many generations. Ning was originally a water genasi. We'll see where that goes. But otherwise, Ning not only is an imperial soldier and has an entire small squadron at her beck and call. She also has a very dark secret, and it's that the Law family, unbeknownst to the general populace, tend to act as the royal family's assassins. They are a specialized group of people, the Shadow Sisters, some might call, who are given tasks and are expected to simply silence people who would otherwise be a threat to the royal family. And Ning plays a very interesting moment in her life right now because she is not yet part of the Shadow Sisters, though she knows that her trials are coming. Right now, she plays in Dungeons and Asians as a soldier who's carrying out an investigation that is to be kept secret about that mysterious piece of jade that fell from the heavens and seems to be turning everything it touches into solid jade. And this is bad PR. This is a bad look for the Empress.
It's a bad look for the Empress. From like a very Chinese perspective, it's a sign that the will of the sky, analogous to the historical mandate of heaven, is weakening, and she can lose face and lose the power that she has over the people. And so while this torrent of jade is slowly, I guess maybe not a torrent, this slow ripple of jade is turning everything in its path to this heavenly stone in a cleansing act, our three heroes are traveling across the southern floodplain, the Empire of Xia, the Kingdom of Mist, to find 4 important flowers called the Four Nobles. And in our last episode, you obtained one of them, the Golden Chrysanthemum, which we can now kind of go to our quest game, which actually gifted Dongfeng with something really cool, which in the game...
something unfortunate.
It was just super unfortunate because you are a cooked shrimp now,
Oh,
I think is what you said.
Yeah. It's
The gift of the vermilion bird. And we're gonna kind of work that into quest. And this will involve a lot of playtesting, a lot of research and development. But those are our characters. This is our quest. And let's kind of start with character creation. Character creation is super straightforward. You're gonna, if you have the PDF, or if you're lucky and you live in the United States of America and you can get a copy of the book, You can the character sheet is literally like a couple of like it's literally like what's it ad libs, what are they called?
It's like Mad Libs.
Mad libs, yeah, and you're literally just filling out a thing on your character sheet.
Yeah, it's fill in the blanks.
It's a fillable form.
It's a fillable form. Sorry.
No, it's like Mad Libs. It's like, hey,
Mad libs.
give me one noun, one role, and one dream, and you have a character.
And I think that's what's interesting. So you have, your character bio, which literally doesn't ask you anything about what your race is, but it's who are you? What do you believe in? Right? It's kind of like the questionnaires that are in Powered by the Apocalypse games. They help frame your character. What do you do? What are your flaws? What are your strengths? What is your goal? Agatha, I'm going to drop 2 questions on you, and you don't have to answer them now. These are questions that I want us to be able to think about long term. And the first one is, what has Dongfeng lost to time?
Ooh, what a great question.
I try to think more like you, Agatha. What has you always ask these really thoughtful questions.
Oh, thanks.
So like the other night when I was like going to bed and I was like, oh wait, and I wrote these down. There we go. So what has Dongfeng lost to time? The second question is, if Dongfeng is immortal in perhaps the enlightened sense or perhaps the literal sense, what is Dongfeng clinging to as time progresses?
Wow.
So
What a
again,
dramatic manager.
So what have you lost and what are you losing?
Yeah.
That's what I want you to think about.
Yeah.
Steve, I had another thing that I wanted you to think about.
Okay.
And it's, who's your mother? It's who is Ning's mother. Now, in the lore, because we have our show Bible, we know that your mother is Shunla, who is the Night Queen. And she is like the wife of Yunla, who is the Minister of War. Your father is very politically powerful. So in order to think about the idea that you were originally a water genasi in a land where generally people are human or human looking, why do we have somebody who looks like a water genasi? Whether or not you're a water genasi or not, we could change that. But one of the things that I want you to think about is, and this is my question to you, is Ning's ancestry rooted in the southern floodplain?
Okay.
So this is kind of like, I want us to think about your parents. Are your parents both from this region? Or perhaps is your mother or your father, because I think we've established that your father is human. So is your mother from Song, the land of rivers, which we're going to introduce next Saturday on a special one-shot, the Walid origin story. Now, this is entirely up to you, but I wanted to kind of frame how we're going to transition Ning's character from D&D over to Quest around that question. What is Ning's ancestry in the narrative sense, and how is that tied to the politics of the Kingdom of the Mist?
Yeah. Do you need an answer right now?
No. Just like the question that I gave to Agatha, that is my question to you.
Okay.
Also, I realized that I wrote down questions for Agatha, but I didn't write down questions for anybody else.
Oh.
So that was
we can tell who's the favorite now,
right?
Obviously the shrimp.
Obviously.
My favorite too.
Walid, I do have a question for you.
Right into that role.
Yeah. Walid, it's my question for you is something that
I didn't study for this test.
Nope, too bad. My question to you is something that we've talked about before, but I want to ask you if Walid is running from something, and if Walid is, we've talked about your heritage in Daesh. We've talked about how you were a stowaway, and our new story that we're going to do next Saturday is going to involve a young Waleed and a group of, I think we're calling it bullshit and banditry is what we're going to call the one shot. That Waleed didn't come straight to Xia from Daesh. So what is Waleed keeping from his travels, from his homeland? So is Waleed clinging to anything literal, like an object? Is it, a scrap of a flag? Is it some sort of amulet? Is it a weapon? Or is it perhaps something more sentimental, like a pair of shoes that he has outgrown, but kind of carried him away from his homeland? So yeah, those are the three questions.
Answers.
Oh,
can I answer?
Shit, yeah, okay.
Are you not ready?
I'm ready because I have the OneNote open.
Oh my god, Daniel!
Go ahead.
Said you weren't gonna talk about it.
Wait,
okay, all right.
wait, you said you would. Okay, it's okay. Let's go. What's your answer?
It's like the tide. It's just like it just comes in every episode.
No, I don't like that imagery. That means that it'll keep coming back.
I mean, you can live in your fantasy. Sorry, let's hear these.
Oh, whoops! I just bumped into the mic.
It's okay.
What has Dongfeng lost to time? And I think what Dongfeng has lost are basically their memories. In addition to the stuff that's sealed away, it's the memories that make a person, if you will, a person. So like the things that really inform the kind of decisions you'll make in the future, those frames or references are constantly slipping away. And he can't hold on to all of it.
And one thing I think we also should go over is what are the pronouns of all of our characters if they do not match our pronouns that are on screen.
That's true. Daniel, what are your pronouns?
He, him. Mike, I'm playing Daniel, the dramatic manager. Daniel is from the land of Toronto.
Oh, the exotic land of Toronto.
Toronto.
Toronto, as the locals say it. Yeah. So my
locals say Trana.
Tirana. My pronouns are he, him. Let's start with Ammar. We'll go over your pronouns and then your character's pronouns, since we're going to be live streaming now.
Yep. So my pronouns are he, him. My character's pronouns are also he, him.
Let's go with Agatha.
My pronouns are she, her, and my character's pronouns are they, them.
And then Steve.
My pronouns are he, him, but Ning's are she, hers.
Okay. So I just wanted to put that out there as a frame of reference. So we have, Agatha, you said, what have you lost to time? Your memories that make you a person are what you've lost.
Yeah, that form a personality.
Okay. So
or that you can identify with your own
I like
identity.
I like it. So what are you clinging on to then?
What Dongfeng clings onto is fulfilling promises and or owed debts. So I think Dongfeng, I don't think they do this consciously, but it is a way to always anchor yourself in the world and with the people around you.
Do you think that Dongfeng gets in trouble in order to make sure that there are these debts and promises so that they are still connected to people in their own way, since they don't know how to make decisions in a way they think is the correct way?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. Now, Ammar and Steve, though, you do not have to have answers for those questions.
I would like some input on my questions here, if that's okay. Because you mentioned the southern floodplains, and we haven't really focused on that in our stream. So when you say the southern floodplains, I have a picture in my head, but could you maybe give some context so I make sure that I'm on the same page as you?
Yeah, I can.
Great.
So, if you go to our shared collaborative space.
Oh my god.
Hey, I'm not saying it. If you go to our shared collaborative space,
it's the one place where we keep all our notes.
It's the one place where we keep all of our notes.
The single
Ammar. Ammar.
What? Don't encourage him? Come on.
And you go to Show Bible, you scroll down, and you go to locations.
I see it.
Under geography is the southern floodplain. So this is something that I've been kind of working on in the open for you folks to see. The southern floodplain is analogous to China. Our game, in terms of aesthetics, religion, and everything like that, is all inspired by the Han Dynasty.
Mm-hmm.
But the Han Dynasty, the end of the Han Dynasty, before the Three Kingdoms era. We may find ourselves in the future, by episode 50, in a time of total war. But right now, we're at a time of great political intrigue.
Mm-hmm.
I've kind of laid out a 6-part history that starts with something called the Great Migration. And the Great Migration is very similar to the Chinese Neolithic, which is what I did my doctoral studies on. It talks about an agricultural people from a land called the Summer Peninsula who found themselves divided and migrated to 2 distinct regions. The Summer Floodplain, which turned into the homeland of the Xia people, the Empire of the Mist. And of course, the nearby Northern Plateau, which became the home of Shuvu, the Kingdom of Birds, which are right now one of the main antagonists from the Xia perspective. Then, of course, we have like the history about the Mist Lords, which is essentially the spring and autumn period in China's history. And this is all for our listeners and our viewers to kind of understand where we're coming from and understand that like history is very nuanced. And while we kind of say, oh, yes, this is China, or this is analogous to Japan, like we saw with Oriental Adventures, we can't treat these cultures, these nations, these civilizations as monoliths. And so what I've been trying to do is slowly unveil a history of our region as is inspired by the passing of time in the real life China.
Mm-hmm.
So the Great Migration #1 is based on the Neolithic. The Rise of the Mist Lords is based on the Bronze Age, specifically the Spring and Autumn period, the Zhou dynasty. The War of the Sands and Sun Xia's campaign against the Oasis Confederacy is also based on the Bronze Age, but I kind of took a step back from the Zhou dynasty and went back in time a couple hundred years and made it similar to the Shang dynasty. Because the Shang dynasty is very much a popular topic in Xinxia media, Xianxia media, right, Agatha?
Xianxia, yeah.
And then, of course, there are other periods, but right now it's the Han dynasty.
I didn't know that was the dynasty that is popular with Xianxia.
There's a really popular, it's the clothes, but it's also the fact that the religion there was very distinct from what is understood as Chinese religion. There's a really popular manhwa called Feng Shanji, and it's about the Shang dynasty.
Oh.
It's a time in China's history when there was a lot of mysticism, ancestor worship. People drank a lot of wine. At least that's what the records tell. But there were tales of great floods and sorcerers, magic swords, things like that.
Yeah.
But you can't trust those records. Everybody was drunk.
You can't trust those records. Well, I mean, we could talk about Chinese history and archaeology for a whole podcast because
we can talk about Feng Shen Zhuan for
we could keep going, right? But like Xinxia, the first empress of Xia, is supposed to be based on Yu the Great, who stopped the floods. And and like
so that's why you named them all the same, like
yes,
Zhou yeah.
So I've taken like extreme liberties, but I've tried to make sure that everything is very Chinese. I haven't taken like, especially in these time periods, there wasn't a lot of interaction with places like Japan. So you're not going to see katanas. You're not going to see this sort of stuff. But over time, we will see cultural exchange, especially when it comes to religion. And that's why Daish is going to be important because it's our analog to South Asia.
What about honor? Sorry, no, don't answer.
What about honor?
But
people have honor, but we don't measure it.
I am zoning in on an answer here, but Daniel, I need some input here.
Okay, go for it.
Here's the story I want to tell for Ning. I feel like Ning, I want her to come from a family that generally because they're a lot in life, because of how they rolled on the where you're born table, just not great. But I think there's a way for someone to like break out of that mold and really open up their opportunities by going to Chang'an and like go to school and like really raise the ranks.
Okay.
And I would like Ning to actually come from the southern floodplains, from a mother who really struggled. And maybe she wasn't a great mother, and maybe her father wasn't great either. But I would like Ning to have come from this place where it is best for her career to basically forget where she came from.
Oh, I love that. That's
Can
awesome.
I just say this is so different than the standard D&D? What's your backstory? I don't know. I like going around and murder hoping.
I don't know. My background is I'm a soldier. I have a badge of rank. I have 25 gold pieces. I'm proficient in vehicles.
I have no ties that bind. That's it.
Yeah,
I have questions.
Agatha,
Yes.
I have tensions. I feel like your questions will help me like release some of that, but go ahead.
So my question is, like, what are geographical reputations, and do we have like a class stratification going on?
And that's for us to determine, right? And I mean, and once again, this is something that like D&D really conditions players to think about. It's like the GM is the arbiter of the rules, and the GM is the creator of the world, and the GM inhabits the world around them. I mean, it's all the players are in this world together, and it's our job to tell this story together. And like, I could just like stay up late and just type into our digital notebook, but ultimately this is our story. And if I say something that we as a group don't like or doesn't fit within your ideas come first, right? So where I pitched Steve as like, Steve, is your character's mother from a different land? And Steve's like, nah. I'm like, cool. Steve's idea is the right idea. There shouldn't be any ego here. Yeah.
So Steve, what do you think?
What do I think about what? Sorry, there's a lot of ideas there.
My question is, are there class stratifications, or is it more like where you come from probably will determine?
Yeah. And like, Steve, since you said that, and this is for our audience, this is for the people listening or watching. That's going to be weird. We have to say listening and watching now. Since, Steve, you said that you came from a poor, struggling family, and that it's best for your career, or Ning's career, to forget her past.
Yeah.
No, that's Ning's mom, right?
No, that's Ning. I thought that's what
That's Ning?
So Ning's biological mother is from the Southern Floodplains.
Yes.
That's what I'd like to write into the fiction.
Okay.
And as such, it's actually just better for her career to just ignore her heritage as being grown up in the Southern Floodplains as a child.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I think
the city in the southern.
Yeah, the Southern Floodplain is where Sha is.
That's where the capital is.
That's where the people live.
Okay. Maybe okay. In my head, I had the Southern Floodplains as like farmland that just like.
So here's
just,
something
like,
else
feed
that
the capital.
Here's something else that people think about when they think about fantasy RPGs like D&D.
Mm-hmm.
There are cultures, there are political entities, but there are also, political regions, right? So one of the things that we should think about is, yes, the Southern Floodplain is a geographic region. And currently, and I say this right now, currently, the dominant political faction of the Southern Floodplain, which is supposed to be Southern China, okay, the people here call themselves the Sha, and because they come from the Summer Peninsula, and their kingdom is that of the Mist, which Josha is the empress of. So there are layers to it.
So you can be. I'm just clarifying where in the Southern Floodplains you're from. So your family did not grow up.
So Steve, I think we should ask: do you want your character to be from this region where the Sha people are, or do you want your character and your character's history to be outside of the political elite of this region?
I would like Ning's story to talk about almost like her diaspora within Sha.
Okay, cool. So this is Ning's story is that of rising through the ranks and transcending different class barriers for you.
Yes. So that might mean that like her biological mother actually isn't from the Southern Floodplains, but like maybe like an offshoot or just like a place that really isn't recognized.
Totally, yeah. Mother from I'm gonna say unknown.
So is your family then not the major like branch of this? What did you call them? The assassin sisters?
So
No, well,
biologically, she would be from like a more simple like farming type of family that are known for working for the sweat of their brow.
Okay.
But once Ning gets to Chang'an and like rises the ranks of school and becomes recognized, she's actually adopted and brought into the La family.
Oh.
And that's probably like where you like, I had it in my head, but never actually spoke it aloud. But I think Ning herself, everything about her is prescribed when she like reaches a certain like career path. She's recognized and they're like, excellent. You have this opportunity, but in order to take this opportunity, you have to play by the rules.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I love this.
That's the story I want to play.
So Ning is adopted. This is our session 0 Redux revelation.
That's really cool. And what I really like about that is, just the effectiveness of political actors goes way down if you just use hereditary mechanisms, right?
Mm-hmm.
So whatever, the Romans tried for a little while this idea of philosopher kings, right? They wouldn't actually, the child of the emperor would not take over. It would be the like very well trained philosopher that would take over. I mean, this only worked mostly in theory, but I really like that the effectiveness of the La clan is on regular adoption of the best and the brightest that they can pick up from anywhere in the.
Is that what it is?
Is that what you're saying, Steve? Because that's also
sorry.
super dope, Ammar.
So
yeah, sorry, actually, I don't want to impose on your.
So I hadn't thought too much about it, but Ammar, I love that idea. So I would like the La family to like Ning's sisters. They might not be by blood, but they are absolutely by
training,
their culture, basically.
Yeah, their culture. Okay. So it's their culture binds them. Their culture that binds them. Their duty binds them, but not their blood.
And also on a political scale, that could be very. That could be a way to show how harmless you are politically to the ruler, because if this is an actual society that does care about like spreading on your blood or like staying actual bloodlines, then you could be like, well, none of us are really passing it on like our positions of power into our children, our literal children, and then this also comes into like what happens to the actual children that they bear.
And these are all questions that will be answered as we progress. Like, we don't have to have the answers now. I mean, a part of this game, and people who tune in know that, like, we're not here to be like, okay, I'm going to move 30 feet. I'm going to then use this attack. And then I'm going to use
secret ties.
And then I'm going to use my bonus action to do this. We're not going to, like, the way we play is like, we're talking. We're trying to tell a story together, but we're trying to tell a story where everyone at the table has a say.
Actually, Agatha, you said something, and I think it's worth repeating. Like you mentioned, like you have to have secret ties, but I feel like Ammar and Agatha, your characters have tons of secret ties. It just so happens that Ning's secret ties are geographically convenient at this moment in time, but like Dongpeng has like a long history of like the Sky Court or the River Court. I forget.
Both.
Both. Okay, so many secret ties, which you may or may not even be aware of. But I think that's really, really cool. And Ammar,
nah, they don't feel as personal. Hey, we need to be better. Come on, Ammar.
You can say call them entanglements.
Ooh.
Entanglements.
Yeah. Just before we leave off of this, Agatha, what you're talking about there is more or less, I think, what happened between the Janissaries and the Ottomans that were in power. I think so. I'm sure Daniel will either correct me or.
Nope, that's not my region of expertise. I mean, sure. I mean, technically it should because I work there, but. I worked at the Iron Age in Jordan. That's what I did there.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
You're like a not crappy Indiana Jones. It's awesome. Uh, like a not just deeply problematic, terrible Indiana Jones.
He's such a bad archaeologist. Oh my
Also
god.
that. But yeah, no. So if I recall correctly, and I hope if there's somebody here who can correct me on this, but was reading up on Ottoman history a little while ago. The Janissaries were, and this is obviously a deeply barbaric and like terrible institution. Barbaric isn't the right word. It's a terrible institution, where they would take children that were almost entirely Christian. You know, it was a Muslim-dominated thing, but they would take Christian children. They would take them very far. They would always post them very far away from where they grew up, just so that they would not have any ties or allegiances at that time.
Oh my gosh, this is like residential schools.
It's not good. It's not good. But and then they would raise them as Janissaries. And now this is where things get a little tricky. There were some reports that you know, they often went to very poor areas and exploited them, but sometimes the parents were like, okay, you're probably going to have a better life as a Janissary than you will growing up in this like dirt village. But again, that is a terrible, you know, that causes a lot of problems too. But anyway, but then this class would be raised. They weren't allowed to get married. They weren't allowed to have kids. But this class would be raised that was loyal only to the Pasha, the emperor at the time, essentially. And so that created a surprisingly stable, sort of close troop thing that lasted for centuries as an institution.
Wow.
So that's why I was saying that your point about the political power is like, well, that actually I think has been shown to work, and I'm putting that in air quotes, in only the sense of stability. And generally speaking, they didn't try to accumulate their own power. They eventually got a lot of power, but they didn't try to accumulate sort of, you know, they didn't try to become the Shah or anything like that. So anyway, little history lesson for everybody.
That's so cool because
whatever I remember.
It lines up really well with like Ning's adoptive family, where like her father is the Minister of War, who is also quite trusted in the court. And it's probably a lot to do with the fact that, you know, Yun probably doesn't have a lot of, maybe any biological children at this moment in time. And like that is quite a performance of your like fealty.
Yeah, it is.
We should all write this down.
Where should we write it, Daniel?
You can go to Show Bible, then you can go to the subsection characters, and then go to PCs.
Great.
He didn't say the O word.
I did not say the word.
I think in this regard, Ammar is much worse than Daniel.
Yeah. So I know people are tuning in for Quest, so we should go to Quest.
Sorry.
Let's move to Quest.
Yes.
Because we could just talk for hours about this. So we are using a tool. It's a free tool online. It's not a tool for Quest, but it's called Notion.so. So if anybody wants to try it out, Notion.so is essentially a tool for creating virtual workspaces. And what I've done within Notion is I've created character sheets for Quest. And so what I've actually done is we each have our own sections. We have all of our things. So we have Dongfeng's sort of Mad Libs. We have Dongfeng's character stats, so the number of hit points you have, your adventure points, and then we have your inventory and abilities. What we've done a little bit differently for those of you who are watching is that we've kind of given our characters a few levels, as you would say. In Quest, you have 10 hit points, and it never goes above 10. So in many ways, I like Quest because it feels lethal, like an OSR game. But the one thing I love about how lethal is that it's balanced out by the ability system. And the ability system lets you be anime as fuck. And that's what I like. So what we've done is we've picked essentially what our roles are. So a character in Quest has a certain number of hit points, certain number of adventure points. Hit points, you know, your hardiness and everything like that. Adventure points are basically your currency that you can use to invoke your abilities. Okay. Now, you also have something called a role. Now, your role is analogous to your class. In Quest, they give you a bunch of different options. They could say, stick with one role or use two. But I think for us, since we're creating characters that don't necessarily fit within what Quest has set out in roles, we've kind of allowed our characters to take abilities from any role we see fit. And of course, make our own. Quest does combat a little bit differently as well. It's fluid and reflexive, like a game like Dungeon World, but damage is flat. So if you're using a standard weapon, you're doing 2 damage. If you're using your fists, you're dealing 1 damage. With your unless you're like Waleed, who can do 2 damage with his hands, with his elbows, with his shins, with his knees.
Solid. My body
solid.
is a
I imagine that Waleed would practice like a martial art similar to like Lethwei or something like that from Myanmar.
Yeah, well, so this will come up at some point, but I was thinking there's sort of an early martial art in India called Shastra Vidya. I am dropping it now that I was thinking that my character might sort of incorporate some of that or find or rediscover that martial art as well.
That's very cool.
I would love, I know I'm putting like undue pressure on you, but if you're comfortable with it, I would love to see like a hybrid of what Daniel has like written as far as like the 8 or 16, I forget the number of weapons with kind of Ammar, like what you're saying here. And I do like Quest a lot because I feel like if those were 2 separate paths or adventure paths, I think they're called.
Learning like there. So here's the cool thing you could do. You can click on these, and they're actually I've put all the information that they're called learning paths, and you get them in order.
So like Waleed could mechanically be on both learning paths, which also when you hear it, it sounds like very narrative as well.
Yep, that is solid. How do I represent that in Notion, or are you writing this
So
down?
wait, so what are we? Sorry, I just missed it. I got a text. Whoops.
Producer Daniel.
No worries. I think what Steve was saying is maybe we can have 2. I can be on 2 learning paths to represent my unarmed combat and also my like armed combat. Is that right, Steve?
Yeah, something like that. Especially if they're from like 2 different cultures.
Yeah. That'll be interesting.
Yeah. So maybe I'll give you an example because what I've done for Ning, and maybe I'm just like showing too much here, but when I was going through Ning's abilities, Ning has several abilities from the spy role in Quest. I felt spy was like very attuned to like what Ning was doing, but it wasn't 100% to what I wanted. So Ning has some abilities from the spy role, such as sneak attack and persona and death hand, which we need to rework a little bit. I think,
we need to rework that.
But these are all things that like spies generally can do. But then Daniel and I have also created the Yosha path. So she also has from that path the signature weapon. She has her dual identity. She has her sure strike. Things that we actually developed in our D&D sessions and put a lot of effort in. That would probably go through like many iterations just to like balance it out. But what I like about Quest is that I can take the idea of sure strike, which was generally my idea of rolling a whole bunch of dice, and if it works out in your favor, you get an anime kill. And I was like, that's really, really cool. But Quest allowed me to basically just kind of write that in, mostly verbatim what I just said. And Daniel and I can just like figure it out at the table when it happens.
Yeah. And the cool thing about designing for Quest is that we're like, okay, one of the things we need to consider is when are we spending adventure points? Or when are we just rolling the dice? And if we find that something's significant enough to, say, roll or to say maybe spend adventure points because we think it's impactful in the narrative, we could turn to one of our abilities. So for those of you who are, listening or watching, the Yosha is our errant knight, our knight errant, our vagabond. And so there are many aspects of that in Ning's character that we'd like to explore. And then, of course, you have a signature weapon, which was from the narrative. It was given to you by Kiana's character, the Empress Josha, and she gave you these 2 beautiful glass vials. And contained within them is living water, which you can use to essentially form swords of ice or water whips or anything that you desire. So I'm pretty excited.
It's a good session. That's all I'm gonna say.
This is a good session.
So good.
This is a really good session. I will have Kiana on again, but I'd also like to have other members of our community on. Ultimately,
Yes.
down the line, I would love to have Waleed's past catch up with him. Be it people from Daesh coming looking for a lost boy who has grown into a man. And maybe we'll have guests on. I would love to have, you know who I'd love to have on? I'd love to have Issa on, Evil Clever Dog from our Al Qadim stream, who I think could play somebody from Waleed's past.
Mm-hmm.
I think Waleed as a bandit has pissed off a ton of people, meaning we could have a ton of cool guests.
Totally.
Yeah.
Entanglements all the way.
Entanglements. Right? And I know we have to have Kiana on more so we could do more stuff with the Empress and Steve. Dong Feng's story is like, we could bring in the gods, which I think is going to be dope. So we're always looking for people who can fill these roles.
Yes. So if you want to play a turtle,
Okay, turtle. It's good. There's going to be a turtle. It's gonna be awesome. And of course, we have to figure out how to bring back Jade, but there are some technical aspects of it that we have to figure out. But yeah, we're gonna bring in people from all over the world to represent their cultures in our world, which I think is something we're trying to do.
yes.
Maybe to sum it all up, Dungeons and Diasians is the friends we made along the way.
Oh my God, Ammar. I hate this.
We should have a cheese meter just in the corner here.
I gotta go to my DM notes section and then write Agatha wants a turtle.
Yes.
Nice.
Entanglement with a divine. Oh, I got something already planned.
That finger waving all around. Great.
Well, I mean, you can probably already figure out what it is because you have the gift of the vermilion bird, right?
Right. Sorry. I mean,
You were the
yay.
one, you grabbed it.
Listen, I didn't know that by touching it, it was gonna just fall on the ground and shatter, and
You grabbed it.
then burn me. I wanted to give it to my boss, straight up.
Straight up, I wanted to grab this glowing golden chrysanthemum from the body of a shriveled corpse that we found inside a monstrous dog.
And give it to my boss.
To be fair, we did find out that previously Dongfeng was able to touch a magical object without being harmed by it. So it did make a lot of sense for you to do it. It's an unexpected.
It's true. So Dungfo will have to deal with this gift that you've received. Not. We don't want. Sometimes we get gifts that we don't want, but we have to hold on to them.
What is this? A life lesson?
Yeah. Apparently, I got lemons and have to make lemonade.
Dungeons and Asians was the life lessons we made along the way.
Stop it!
Oh my god! See, this is when I'm gonna have a mug and it's just gonna say "Aya" on it, and I'm just gonna sip it every single time we do something like that. That's coming. So we've kind of talked about how we've made La Ning. Like, Steve, do you want to read what you wrote for your introduction? Because I think it's really great.
Yeah, so that's one of the things I really about Quest, because I think, actually, to go back, Ammar and Agatha, we were talking about the accessibility, beginners and what have you. I don't take that lens on Quest. I think Quest is really good for streamers, and the reason, because I'm a streamer now, but no, the reason I say that is because the character sheet reads just like a nice intro. Like if you were to start any kind of show or any kind of podcast, things like that, but just reading out your character sheet, you could, and it would be engaging and give the audience enough information to kind of dive in. And that's kind of what I liked about it. So I'm just gonna read my sheet verbatim.
Yeah,
and
because it's
that's
dope.
what it is. So hello, my name is Ning, she, her. I am 24 years old and I stand at 5'5" tall. I'm the party's Yosha. When people see me, They first noticed my emerald banner uniform, a symbol of my rank and pedigree that demands the respect of the Sha people of the southern floodplain. And my tightly wound energy, as I am constantly in a state of cat-like readiness. I wear twin jia, ornate leather armor, and move with graceful purpose. I'm from Chang'an, the capital of Sha, where my people are known for housing, serving, and protecting the Empress Zhousha. I believe in duty, but my passionate side can get in my way. I dream of making my parents proud.
That's that Asian character right there.
That's solid.
Making my parents.
I just want to make them proud.
Yeah, so that's like
Great.
that's basically the whole sheet, right? The rest is like
Yeah.
inventory and abilities, but like that right there, if there was like nothing else, you could like join a LARP with that.
Yeah. Well, a couple things that I really love. A, you're right. It's totally built for streaming. But B, when you read through Quest, there's a section on safety tools. And built into the character sheet, it tells you to put what your character's pronouns are.
That's true.
I love that.
That's true.
I think that's great. But what I also think is really cool is that, like, you know, on the note of this being great for streaming, is that, hey, look, we have a system that won't have us searching through our character sheet. How much do I have in perception? What are my spells? It's like, I have these abilities. Spend AP. Let's go. Or like, this happens because we are competent characters. Let's roll the dice only when we think there might be some risk involved. But if we look to your abilities, like, I don't know, Feather Hook, a magical grappling hook that gently glides itself upward like a balloon until it reaches and attaches to a ledge. You can tie any length of rope to the hook. That's narratively interesting, and we can change it to be whatever we want. Is it literally you holding out your vial, Zhousha's edge, your sword, and that living water in there turns into a cloud, then rises up?
Damn.
Right? It could be that. Or it could be throwing up a water whip, right? But you don't have to roll to see if you fail to do that. It happens. But your decision to use this ability is based on your adventure points, which makes you think and act with purpose, which I really like.
They seem similar to fate points as well.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what they reminded me of.
I think it's got some great things. I wrote one for one of our NPCs, and I don't know if you took a look at this, Ammar. But I wrote one for Shuang. So we currently have a traveling NPC who is one of Waleed's entanglements. And this character
Is that
initially...
what we're calling them now?
Yes, it's an entanglement. She was originally like a scholar in the Grand Library and demonstrated, not even proved herself, demonstrated that, you know, she could do other things. She's awesome. She's badass. She's one of my favorite.
She is badass.
Okay, so...
Also, I just realized she's older than me.
How old is your character?
We're going to find out. Wait. We're going to find out.
Sorry.
We're gonna find out.
Sorry. Hashtag spoiler alert.
Please. Okay.
You have to tune in next Saturday to find out.
But that's a prequel.
Not this Saturday, on the 25th, right?
25th, yes. This Saturday, we're going to hear your voice and see your face when you talk about Al-Qadim. So our character, our NPC, kind of we could say it's like the companion to the Doctor. This is how I help insert lore into the world, because she's a character that you can talk to. Hello, my name is Shuang, she, her. I am 23 years old and stand 5'6" tall. I'm the party's scholar. That's kind of a role that I'd like to kind of think about when we move forward, right? When people see me, they first notice my calm demeanor and curiosity about the world around me. I wear functional, scholarly clothing issued by the Empire and move with a spring in my step. I'm from Xia.
She's cute.
I'm from Xia, where my people are known for the love of arts and their beautiful homeland. I believe in knowledge, but my naive side can get in my way. I dream of one day running the great library of Xia like Master Panyan, but would like to open its doors to everyone in the kingdom and those beyond the southern floodplain.
So cool.
So that's what I want for Shuang. We also established that down the line, we've established that Penyan is, in episode 6, we established that Penyan is the name of the Grand Librarian who wrote the history and created the history of this kingdom, this empire. But that Penyan was just the name. I wrote in our notebook that Penyan and the Empress, the first Empress, they said that the Penyan, to honor her, would be the only author of the great history. So that anyone who would ever put brush to paper would have to commit to changing their name to Penyan to honor this original scholar. So maybe down the line, Shuang becomes Penyan or takes on the title of Penyan.
That's really cool.
That's so cool.
That's one I wrote at like 2 a.m.
There's a lot of these like passing down of positions.
It's very bureaucratic.
Yeah.
like China historically.
It's true.
Like there are even myths about, there are mythical legendary bureaucrats as well. Zhonghui, the executioner, the exorcist. Remember the ghost, the shepherd of ghosts?
Yeah. His story was really sad though.
It's super sad. Do you want to tell it?
Yeah, so I don't know when this started, but in China they had standardized exams for, if you take it, then you can prove your knowledge of like the 4 books and 5. Anyway, you prove that you are educated enough to become a government official, and this is a thing that happened. And usually you would get chosen. There would be the first place, and then there's also later on there's also a special position that gets chosen, and they're usually good looking, but maybe not the most informed, or whatever they wrote was not their essay was not the best. Anyway, so in this story, this myth of Zhonghui, he won first place. He won 状元 because his essay about whatever political question was the best. But then when he went to the emperor to kind of receive this honor of being first, the emperor saw his face and was like, "Not an Uggo." So
wow.
I love it when "not an Uggo."
I mean, that's pretty much what
true.
The emperor said.
That's the myth, yeah.
And Zhonghui was like there, and and I think in the story he was supposed to be very frightening in the way that he looks. Like if you see the illustrations, he actually looks fine, but I don't know. Anyway, so then I think this is just like a source of a shame for him personally. So in the story, he was so upset that this is the thing that happens when he's coming here, supposedly being recognized for his brilliance. He commits suicide by like a typical way that people committed suicide is to bash your head against a pillar, because of course you can't bring a weapon into the court. So anyway, so he did, and then Daniel, would you like to take over for the continuation?
No, go ahead. You're telling a great story.
Oh, okay. And then one of the gods the god that kind of it controls the underworld,
it's like King Yan.
Yeah. Basically where you go after you die, your soul, heard about this. And he said, "Wow, that's a shame. That your talents have gone to waste. And you know what? There is a use for your face." Oh no, I think this is a different story. Because Zhonghui. Anyway, so
he becomes basically the hellish exorcist, the shepherd of ghosts.
And I thought like Zhonghui became like the door gods. Yeah, so
people put pictures of him on their doors.
Yeah. So if you see like those pictures of like there's like a guy holding some kind of spear in a dramatic position on like Chinese people's doors, that's that guy, and he is protecting the house from evil spirits, basically.
Cool.
That's Zhonghui.
So the point is that the bureaucracy is built into the mythology and then the literal culture of the time period.
Right, and that it's been around for so long, it has become mythologized.
Yeah, in a
That's
way,
fascinating.
and it's an example of how, you know, I think many RPGs do a poor job of this, in that they don't really think about what the people do. You know, how the people think, what the people speak, and how their belief systems impact their the literal artifacts of their existence. Their government documents, their buildings, their roads, what they use, what they wear. Right? It's cool.
Fascinating.
So
And
for
that's clearly
Schwa-
your background in archaeology coming through there too.
yeah,
Because you spent all your time trying to reverse engineer that process by finding the artifacts. You try to figure out, oh, what were the people like? What did they think? How did they feel? And what were the institutions?
Did I ever tell you that story about the time I found a 9,000-year-old figure of a busty lady?
What?
What?
Steve's like, excuse me?
Wait,
9,000?
Yeah.
Is that older than the fertility from Babylon? The
It's in
fertility-
9,000. Well, it was in a site that was technically 9,000 years old, but it was from like an upper stratus, was probably only maybe 1,000 years old.
Still really old.
Still really old, but essentially we found this. It's on my phone. I'll find the photo and I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but
post
we
it
were-
on Twitter too.
Well, we were digging at this site in where was the town? I forget. This was in 2017, and I found this figure. It was made of clay. It was about this big, maybe like an inch and a half. And in my head, I was like, "Those are boobs." And all the archaeologists around me were just like, "Oh yes, some sort of representation of an animal." And they had this long debate, and I was like, "Those are boobs." And I'm like, "Those are boobs." And honestly,
Those are human
they
boobs.
couldn't settle on what it was, but I know what I saw.
I know what I
I know
saw.
what I have these. If you go to my Instagram and you scroll all the way down, my Instagram's the same as my Twitter, Daniel H. Kwan. I spent a month, like 3 meters underground in this hole in like 45-degree heat,
Oof.
just like digging. It's actually where I wrote Ross Rifles.
Very cool. I love that this has turned into story time.
Yeah. So okay. So Shuang has taken on 2 roles in our quest game. Shuang has the role of doctor and fighter.
Yeah.
Now, she's like a scholar, and I eventually want to think about scholarly moves as we learn more about the game, or to see if there are other roles that might be better for this. But right now, I have doctor, so she's got mend, relieve, heal, and examine the dead to kind of reflect her understanding of the natural and mythological world. And then, of course, she is very skilled at combat, as we learned in episodes 7. But the thing I liked about the fighter is that the fighter's abilities in that role are not all tied to dealing damage and hurting things. They're tied to telling stories, inspiring others around you. So I picked Summon the Blood, where you would recite a poem, Valiant Soliloquy, which would inspire allies, or War Story or Martial, which would all be tools that we can tell stories set in our world. So that's kind of what I've done. We only have a couple of minutes because we let time kind of
Run away
from us. Let's go through our characters. We're at Dongfeng. Dongfeng, you have quite a few. Do you want to read what you wrote for your introduction?
Sure.
Because we have Ning, we have Shuang. Let's do Dongfeng.
Hello. My name is Dongfeng, they, them. I am around 100 years old and stand, I don't know how tall. Ammar, you're a tall person. How tall is very tall?
Like 6.5 feet is pretty tall.
But like needs to be taller than the
7
average
feet?
tall human.
7 feet?
Yeah, 7 feet would be very tall.
7
How
feet
tall
would
is
be
Yao
like
Ming?
unnatural.
I
I shouldn't say that.
How tall is Yao Ming? Yao Ming is, that doesn't help, that's in meters.
35 feet.
35 feet.
I need a source on that.
He's 7.5 feet tall.
No way. I know I feel extra bad when I said, but
He
it's not.
tall.
7.5?
No shit. Yeah, 7.6 actually. Apparently, according to the Grand Scholar Wikipedia.
Yeah, well, I am around 100 years old and stand Yao Ming tall.
Okay. Oh my goodness. Okay, cool.
I'm the party's sky soldier. When people see me, they first notice my colorful antennae and me sizing them up. I wear heavy practical armor over my exoskeleton and move with languidness. I'm from the river. I forgot what the name of the river was, where my people are known for their political squabbles. I believe in honor, but my distrustful side can get in my way. I dream of figuring out my own personal prophecy.
So cool.
So
It's so cool.
self-obsessed.
Hey, I love that. So you've got a couple of different rules. I mean, you have Heavenly Gifts, which is an ability we've given you that's not in the rule set of Quest.
Yeah.
That basically lets you go all anime and unleash like a Kamehameha of fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's enough damage within the game to kill any common enemy in one shot.
Yeah.
OP.
I mean, you can.
I'm just waiting for everyone else's. I want to see theirs.
I think you're gonna. It really depends on who gets one of them. And there's 4 nobles and only 3 of you.
It's true.
So,
Okay, you know who gets 2? I think Lanning gets 2.
I think Xuan gets 1.
No.
Oh,
Okay.
we'll cross that bridge when we get there, or maybe a villain
not a
takes
bridge.
one. It's not a bridge. So we have we're working on the abilities for you for Sky Soldier. The one that we have right now is Awakened Knowledge, and I think it's kind of fitting that we haven't figured that one out yet, as it's going to work in Quest, because Dongfang hasn't gotten to that point in the story.
It's true.
Do you, so I kind of put these together for you, just kind of to get it ready for here because of your keyboard. But do you like what we have here, or are there changes that you want to make?
I want to get rid of Speak with Animal.
Dope. Yeah, just delete that.
Yeah, I'll delete it. But I like the other stuff. I like what you chose, like the inspire. You inspire a nearby NPC by reciting a meaningful statement to them. That is great as a narrative flag for me to keep hitting. Mm-hmm. So that now I can just talk to people and be like, the water falls into the pond once, but the ripples spread out for much longer. And then pretend that that's something.
Oh, I understand.
Yeah, it's great.
It's great.
I really like that one.
And then I love how if you said that the NPC would shape their behavior around this ideal and cannot fall victim to their flaw. I think that's cool.
Indeed.
Okay, so we're going to have to add some more then. Since when we get back to the story, it will be episode 9. You're supposed to start with 6 abilities and you add 1 after every session. But I feel like if this is an actual play, we would scale really fast. I don't know how you folks feel about that, but you're going to be hitting some really powerful abilities real quick. How do we feel about how we're going to scale or any modifications we might make?
I'm not interested in becoming powerful.
Yeah, I'm cool with taking it real slow.
Steve?
I have zero opinion of it because I have no idea how powerful actually means in this game.
That's true. I guess we'll
powerful means you can swing your hand and then some element will flow out and just chop your enemy in half.
But is that what that means? Because I looked at some of the other abilities, save the legendary ones, and even at the end of your path, the ability is obviously very powerful, but at a great cost to your adventure points.
Yep.
Like 1 per session, and that's kind of your one really powerful thing.
We also
I could be wrong.
We also need to figure out how fast and at what rate you gain adventure points. And I think that's something...
Doesn't it refresh per session or something? Oh, no, that's not true.
No. So that's something we could discuss off air. We'll figure out how they refresh, and then we'll update the audience on how we do that.
Okay.
I like the idea of gaining abilities when your character learns something new in the story. So, for instance, if Waleed met somebody at a village and learned a new form of fighting or learned a magical art, then Waleed could potentially gain an ability that way.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Just for reference, just to underline this, there are no levels in this game, right?
Yes.
You advance. The character advancement mechanic is you pick up additional abilities.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more like feats, like if it was feat only for leveling up.
Yeah, except you could call upon them. Let's actually move into Waleed's, because Waleed's is probably the character that you might. I mean, it has a lot of really fleshed out custom stuff that I put in there. But Waleed, you're playing the martial artist, monk, or whatever. We've kind of talked over, and I know you haven't filled out that section yet, and that's okay, because you literally just saw this today. But for you, I picked fighter and spy to start out of the core roles.
Yep.
Because I really liked Strap.
Yep.
Because I was like, this is Waleed.
Yep. So Strap, for reference, is unless I'm being actively searched by another creature, I can conceal up to 2 weapons in my clothing without being noticed.
Yeah, and I figured, like, I was like, well, Waleed's probably like hiding snacks and weapons and all sorts of things. And then I added 2 from our martial artist role, from a learning path that I'm calling Iron Body. So it's this like body conditioning, hard style. So I've given you 2. One is called Iron Soul. So you could basically, in the narrative, align your spirit and your form and your breathing to strengthen your body to regain hit points. It's kind of like that moment in like a wuxia film when the character is wounded and they kind of like steel themselves for the fight to continue and they're reinvigorated. And then give you Iron Skin, which, depending on how much AP you spend, will allow you to essentially ignore damage.
Solid.
Giving Waleed the ability to maybe stand in the way and protect somebody, since that's kind of how you've been playing the character.
Yep.
Waleed is kind of the bruiser. Ning is 100% a very like balanced character. You have weapons, but you have very powerful social abilities. I'm very excited to kind of see how they work into how you play Ning, Steve. Especially when you try to use your connection to the Empire and the Empress.
Yep.
And if that even works when you leave the safety of the core.
I am very much aware that that well will eventually run dry. So we'll see how that goes. I'm very excited.
I mean that, and this is all development for Ning, and we all get to kind of do it together.
Absolutely.
So we're running out of time. We've been streaming and recording for 2 hours.
2 hours.
I know, it's crazy.
Flown by.
So let's I kind of want to end with our initial impressions. What do you think of Quest? You could love it, you could hate it. What are the things you like? What are the things you don't like? I could start if you want, or unless you have something you already kind of have, an impression that you already have.
Yeah, go
Go ahead.
Okay. So for me, what I like about Quest is that from the more production side, it allows us to focus on the story. And it allows us to engage with its mechanics in a way that will feel impactful and important and flashy in our story. I like that. I like how the abilities, in a way, guarantee success when they are needed in the story. Because, I mean, like, you could be building up to this moment, and I could say roll, and then you roll a 1. And while a 1 could be narratively interesting, it might take our production, which is this stream, in a direction maybe we didn't want initially, or maybe something that you didn't envision. So I like how Quest has that built into it. I like how it's designed. I don't know if it's intentional, but how it's designed for streaming.
Yeah. I think if I had to encapsulate my feelings about this game in like one kind of pithy sentence, it's that it's absolutely not a war game. And that's both like a good thing and it could be a good thing. It also could be a bad thing, in that one of the appeals of D&D for me is like I like busting out the minis. I like pulling out like the battle map, drawing the terrain. If I'm like super pro like Daniel is, I pull out like my 3 terrain and like we can like play around with little doodads and things like that. We're not gonna get that in Quest, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But I am very interested to see kind of if I let that go, like what else could happen. So pretty neutral.
Alternatively, how can we take Quest and make it work with minis? Like, we're just playing with toys, right? It's just like, well, I want to use this ability. I'm going to move here, and I'm going to do that.
Right.
It's true.
I don't see why we couldn't use minis, because I fully planned on it.
Oh.
Now I have more to think about, but like that is my initial kind of read on the game, and I'm excited.
Yeah. I mean, I do wonder whether the underlying assumption when it comes to minis is suddenly has to be very precise. You put it on a battle mat and it's 5-foot squares, but maybe that can also be narrative. Like the distance between the characters is still narrative. You know what I mean?
Totally. Or we just get action figures made and we're just Agatha,
make a fight by smashing them into each other.
I like it. I agree about the shining star in Quest is the roles, and they are narratively evocative in a way that I haven't really seen in a game before. In that, like the way the focus, you can choose the direction of how you're going to envision your character acting versus what they are necessarily good at. That's a very fascinating way of guiding character creation and role playing. So I like it.
I think it's super dope. Ammar, did you have like an opinion? Because I know you were vibing off of Steve.
I mean, I think I said what I think I basically said my thoughts at the beginning. I'm also just going to go back to the mechanics. I'm really interested to see how the sort of action economy is influenced by having action tokens. Sorry, what are they called again?
Adventure points.
Adventure points, kind of like fate points and stuff. So I'm very interested to see how that develops and how that affects our gameplay, because there's opportunities for us to like hoard it for a bit and then at a climactic moment cash in all our chips to do like a mega super interesting thing, right?
Form Voltron, spend all your adventure points. I think that'd be so cool.
I'm gonna spend 10 adventure points to win the game.
You win. The show's over. We're done. Let's pack up.
Yeah,
let's go. So yeah, I hope you folks who are tuning in via the podcast or our YouTube channel have enjoyed this. Those of you who have joined us as we are recording live, I hope you enjoyed that as well. This is a first for us. So we're going to figure out formatting and everything like that. As always, Asians represent. Dungeons and Asians is part of the One Shot Podcast Network. If you head to oneshotpodcast.com, you can listen to a variety of amazing podcasts like, let's go with Character Creation Cast, who I really love. They make characters. They explore different systems, and they give you their genuine opinions of what they think of the character creation process, which is something that we just went over with a brand new book and game to us, Quest RPG. If you have any questions about the themes we discussed on this episode, or anything else related to Asians Represent, you can get in touch with us on Twitter at AZNSRepresent. You can find all of us on Twitter. You can find Ammar at Ammar Ijaz, Agatha at Mighty Shrimp, Steve at DM Steve, and myself at Daniel H. Kwan. If you have personal questions that you'd like to ask us about our preferences in the game, what we think about Quest, or anything like that. Or, of course, you can email us at aznsrepresent@oneshotpodcast.com. We're going to go from me to Ammar. We're going to try this live. My name is Daniel.
Gosh.
Steve.
wait, no, you're
going to go on the overlay. We're going to go me to Ammar.
So it goes Daniel, Steve, Agatha, Ammar.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm Daniel.
I'm Steve.
I'm Agatha.
I'm Daniel. Oh wait, I screwed it up. Didn't
What?
No. What?
I'm Ammar.
And you've just listened to
Asians represent.
We got to work on that one live. That's a tough one to do when we're not in person.
Yeah.
Thank you to everyone who tuned in for this stream. We really appreciate it. This was a first for us. If you have any feedback, please let us know. Show some love for Ammar, Agatha, and Steve at the chat. Y'all are great. I really cherish the moments that we have together when we can tell stories and represent our communities. Y'all are amazing. And then for those of you who tuned in live, thank you. And take care of yourselves. Bye, everyone.
Peace.